everyone, and welcome back to the Wisdom by Harry YouTube channel. My name is Harry.
And I'm Mary. We're so excited to have you here today for another fascinating episode.
You know, today we're going to kind of take a look at something that's really interesting. Kind of this intersection of traditional finance and cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And this idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You know, like how governments hold gold?
Right, like gold reserves.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So kind of a similar idea, but with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So what's the story here? Why is the U.S. doing this, and what does it mean? Well, we've got these two news articles, both from March 2025. Okay.
And they're reporting on an executive order signed by former President Trump.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump, to create this reserve.
So let's get right to it.
Yeah.
What exactly does this executive order say? Is the U.S. government like suddenly buying up all the Bitcoin?
Not exactly. So the order mandates the creation of this strategic Bitcoin reserve, but it's not going to be funded through like government purchases. Instead,
Okay.
it'll be filled with Bitcoin that has already been seized through like, criminal and civil asset forfeiture.
Okay, so they're taking this confiscated Bitcoin and essentially turning it into like a national reserve.
Right.
That's pretty
Pretty unconventional.
unconventional approach.
Yeah.
What's the rationale behind this? Like, why are they doing this?
The stated purpose is to create a store of value,
No.
kind of mirroring the function of those traditional gold reserves.
Hmm.
So the idea is the government isn't going to be actively trading this Bitcoin,
Okay.
but holding on to it as a potential asset.
Okay, so it's less about actively engaging in the crypto market and more about just kind of capitalizing on these seized assets.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, one of the articles mentioned other cryptocurrencies. Is it just Bitcoin? Are they looking at other things?
You're right, it's not just Bitcoin. The executive order also calls for the creation of a U.S. digital asset stockpile. And this stockpile is going to include other cryptocurrencies that the government seizes. They specifically named Solana Cardano, XRP, and Ether.
Wow. So they're casting a wide net. Yeah.
It sounds like they're building like a digital Fort Knox,
Right.
like one of the articles put it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a move this big wasn't without its controversy.
Of course not. No.
Right.
This announcement sparked a lot of debate.
Of course.
Yeah, you have proponents who believe this could actually benefit taxpayers if Bitcoin's value continues to climb. They see it as like a smart long-term investment strategy for the government.
Right, but that's assuming Bitcoin's value does go up.
Right.
What are the critics saying?
Well, the critics say this isn't really a new investment at all. It's just a rebranding of assets the government already has.
Okay.
Some critics even call it a pig in lipstick.
Wow.
Yeah. They argue this move essentially legitimizes these seized assets and gives this unearned windfall to the crypto community without addressing any concerns about government overreach in the crypto market.
And we can't ignore the timing of all of this.
Yeah.
This happened during Trump's presidency.
Right.
And his family had launched their own cryptocurrency meme coins, and he had a stake in a crypto platform. The timing seems a bit suspect, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Even though his aide said he'd handed control of his businesses over, the potential conflict of interest is a valid concern.
It definitely adds another layer to this whole story.
Absolutely.
So we've got this bold move by the government, but what was the initial reaction? Did the crypto market celebrate this?
Well, actually, no. Bitcoin's price dropped over 5% right after the announcement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the market seemed disappointed that the government wasn't directly buying Bitcoin, which suggests that the move might have been more symbolic than anything else.
Interesting. So maybe the crypto world saw this as like a half-hearted step rather than a full embrace.
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so we've covered the executive order itself and the initial reactions, but this is just the beginning,
Right,
right?
it's just the start.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
The creation of the reserve was just the first chapter.
Now we need to see what happened next and if this actually amounted to anything tangible.
Right. That's the real question, isn't it?
Right.
Did this reserve actually live up to the hype? Or was it just a blip on the radar? We'll find out right after this.
So did this Bitcoin reserve, did it actually make a difference?
Well, one of the articles mentioned David Sachs. He was the White House crypto czar at the time.
Right.
And he estimated that the U.S. government had something like 200,000 Bitcoins,
Wow.
which was valued at like $17.3 billion back then.
That's a huge sum.
Yeah.
And remember, that valuation was from 2025.
Right.
Considering Bitcoin's volatility, that reserve could be worth way more today, or maybe even less, you know?
Yeah, it's a total gamble.
It's a gamble, it really is.
So they're playing the long game with a really unpredictable asset.
Yeah, exactly.
But did they just like sit on those Bitcoins, or did they actually use them for anything?
Well, based on the information that we have, there's no indication that they sold any Bitcoin from the reserve. So it seems like they're sticking to that initial strategy of treating it as like a long-term store of value.
So it's like a digital gold vault.
Yeah, kinda.
What about that digital asset stockpile they were setting up? Did they ever say what's in it?
That's where things get a little bit murky.
Oh.
There hasn't been much public information about the specific contents or the value of that stockpile. It's likely that they're holding like a diverse mix of cryptocurrencies that they've seized over time, but the details are pretty scarce.
It's like a secret treasure chest of digital assets.
It is, yeah.
It makes you wonder what their strategy is.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, stepping back for a second, even without knowing all the details, this whole thing raises some interesting questions about how governments are viewing cryptocurrencies.
Absolutely. I mean, this Bitcoin reserve was a huge turning point.
Okay.
It signaled that governments were starting to see cryptocurrencies not just as something to regulate, but potentially as a tool to use in their own financial strategies.
It's a totally different way to think about a reserve asset, right?
Totally.
It's always been gold.
Yeah.
But now we've got this digital asset that's potentially changing all the rules.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift for sure.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what else governments might consider holding in the future.
Yeah.
Could we see reserves of, other digital assets, maybe even things like virtual real estate in the metaverse?
Oh, wow. That opens up a whole other can of worms.
I know, right?
Government-backed NFTs, metaverse land grabs. I mean, the possibilities are kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
But before we get too lost in the what ifs, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Yeah.
This Bitcoin reserve is real. It actually exists.
Right.
It's a real example of how crypto is blending the lines between the digital world and traditional finance.
Exactly. We're seeing a financial evolution happening right now.
Right.
And this Bitcoin reserve is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And you know what's fascinating for me and for our listener?
Yeah.
Is that understanding crypto now isn't just about the technology.
Right.
It's about understanding global economics,
Yeah.
government strategies, the future of finance.
Absolutely.
This goes way beyond just Bitcoin.
This deep dive has given us like a glimpse into this really pivotal moment in financial history, a moment that highlights the fact that money is changing.
Yeah.
Digital assets are becoming more important.
Right.
And the relationship between governments and the world of cryptocurrency is just becoming more and more complex.
It's getting complicated.
It is, yeah.
But this story doesn't end here, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Did this Bitcoin reserve fade away? Or did it have like a real lasting impact on the global financial landscape?
That's what we'll explore next. Did this big move by the US set off a global trend, or did it end up being just an isolated experiment?
So did other countries decide to, follow the US's lead and create their own Bitcoin reserves?
That's a really good question. And yeah, a lot of people were wondering about that back then. Would this trigger this global trend of governments diversifying into Bitcoin? But from what we can tell, the US has remained kind of unique in its approach. No other major economy has publicly announced a strategic Bitcoin reserve on a similar scale.
Okay, so no copycats.
Yeah.
At least not that we know of. But even if it didn't start this, worldwide trend, did the US Reserve actually do anything? Did it make a difference in the US economy or even in the crypto market?
It's hard to say for sure, Measuring the long-term impact of something like this is really difficult, especially with something as, volatile as cryptocurrency. But it is interesting that even though Bitcoin's price initially dropped after the announcement, like we talked about,
right,
its price actually continued to go up in the years that followed.
So maybe the reserve had like a subtle effect on, boosting confidence in Bitcoin. Even if it wasn't this massive buying spree, just the fact that the US government thought it was a worthwhile asset to hold might have sent like a positive signal to investors.
Yeah, that's possible. And we also have to remember that the executive order included that budget-neutral approach to acquiring more Bitcoin. So they could be auctioning off a portion of their holdings to, minimize market impact, or even using Bitcoin for certain types of government transactions.
Okay, so potentially adding to their Bitcoin stash without really shaking things up too much. It makes you wonder what's going on, behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
But even if this reserve didn't turn into this huge global phenomenon, that some people predicted it was still a wake-up call, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It really challenged the way people thought about things and brought cryptocurrency into the mainstream conversation in a way we hadn't really seen before. Governments and financial institutions, they had to acknowledge that crypto was something to pay attention to. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. You know, it marked this crucial moment in how governments understand and deal with digital assets.
And for you listening, this means that understanding crypto isn't just about, all the tech jargon and blockchain and all that anymore.
Right.
It's about understanding like the whole global financial system, government strategies, and the potential for digital assets to like really reshape the future of finance.
Absolutely.
This goes way beyond Bitcoin.
What we've talked about today is really like a snapshot of this key moment in financial history.
Yeah.
It shows how money is changing,
Right.
how digital assets are becoming more and more important,
Yeah.
and how the relationship between governments and the world of cryptocurrency is, well, it's becoming increasingly complex.
Yeah, it's a whole new world out there.
It is. And as you continue to, learn about crypto and explore this world,
Yeah.
keep this story in mind. It's a great example of how innovation can come from unexpected places.
Right.
And how even the most well-established systems can be disrupted.
And I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Exactly.
It's like this constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen next.
But yeah, no one knows what the future holds for governments and cryptocurrencies, but it's going to be fascinating to watch.
It definitely is. Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.